Oh, there we go. Had it on the wrong screen. Hello again. Hello again. Good day. This week with me today is a wonderful photographer whose path started 20 years ago and has seen him hop around the world of sports in a rather photojournalistic fashion. Richie Hopson. Richie Hopson's career started in photography with him shooting skateboarders and musicians, both scenes he was immersed in personally, and after a few years being office bound as an image maker, he decided to become a full-time assistant working for Robert Wyatt, a fashion and advertising photographer. He worked on multiple campaigns for big names like Prada and Valentino, and working with shooting big names as well, like Brad Pitt and Gisele. His own career as a freelance photographer has seen him shoot for people such as Paul Smith, brands like Red Bull, Puma and Lloyds Bank. And he has also taken quite a few covers of Cyclist Magazine. He's worked with the Sunday Times, and he's photographed pretty famous people such as Stokes, Chris Froome and Lemmy. However, he has definitely made his career in a more of a photojournalistic fashion, and that's the type of photography we're going to be talking about today. We're going to show a number of images, a few more than we would normally, and it will be a great pleasure talking through them with him. Joining me today live from the Surrey Hills in the south of London is Richie Hopson. Please join me in welcoming him to our screens. There
Hello.
He is.
Hello.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Good. We can. Good afternoon.
Good.
How are you?
I'm very good. Very good. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. It's a good little setup you've got in the background there with your H, just in case I forget.
My name, yes.
Your
clutter.
Name.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It's refined and organised clutter, wouldn't you say?
Thank you. Curated clutter.
Curated clutter. So look, before we kick off, this week we're doing it slightly differently. We've got a lot of pictures from Richie, purely because Richie's style is less about this single image than a story. Although, admittedly, it all starts with a single image. So I'm going to play a short little video, and then we're going to dive in and talk about Richie's pics. Quite a selection, quite a collection. So Richie, your career started really with a skateboard in hand.
That's true, yes. I was a skateboarder and a BMXer and into all sorts of things like that. And but I also had an interest in photography, and the two kind of evolved together, I suppose. And I wasn't actually a very good skateboarder, but I'm not even sure I was a very good photographer. But the two went hand in hand. So I started photographing my friends, and slowly managed to start getting a few pictures published in the skateboard magazines and things like that. And I guess that's kind of where it started. Yeah.
Was Graham Rom one of your friends?
Graham wasn't one of my friends. No, that was. He became a friend, of course, after photographs of you. So that particular photograph you're talking about, I don't know if you've shown it or
it's
not.
up on screen now. Yeah.
Is it? Okay. So that was part of a project for Sidewalk magazine, skateboard magazine, and I started photographing the sort of the decaying 1970s skate parks around the UK. And this was part of that sort of ongoing assignment, if you will. And Rom Skate Park is in Romford in Essex, and Graham was just there ripping that day. That was taking pictures with some others, and you know, he just looked so good, and so we shot this photograph with him. I don't know what you like about it, but I was very inspired by sort of Glennie Friedman and all these kind of American skateboard photographers at the time, and this just looks so Californian. Well, Graham looks so Californian with his long hair and his bandana and his Alva board, and a lot of people kind of thought that was a picture of Tony Alva at the time. I guess maybe not people in skateboarding, but so yeah, it felt like a kind of timeless kind of image, and yeah, it was chance that I met Graham grinding the pool.
I think it is timeless, actually, very much so. I mean, obviously aided and abetted slightly by the black and white, but it's, you know, kind of straight out of Venice or American skate parks type image, and it's super striking. You know, it's a fisheye wide angle, bang, he's there right in front of you. You know, it's a great image to start on, and kind of obviously it's sort of one of the starters of your career, which has obviously sort of taken on a slightly different path as the years progress. But what for me here is great is, you know, you started it for all the right reasons. You were there because you're a skateboarder, and you were there taking pictures, and there's no better concoction than that, really. And you can start to see where kind of your style and your love of shooting in that way comes from, especially if we move over to your second skate image, which is I love it, because I'm all about architecture and sport and putting them together, or architecture on its own, to be fair, a lot of minimal work, but this is the wavy roof, and you know, the wavy roof is fab, because you look at that and you know, I'm not sure where it's a school or an office building. You'll tell us where. But the guy, again, he looks, you know, like a complete dude. He clearly is. He's up there for a start, which is fairly unorthodox anyway. And this is another sort of shot which I think really sort of nicely shows where you started to, what your style was and where you started to come from. Where was this?
So this is Maida Vale. And at the time I was living in Maida Vale. Literally, that was behind my house, Whitwell Flat. I guess a big part of the kind of skateboard photography thing for me was sort of finding interesting places and objects that could possibly be skated and we could turn into an interesting image. So I spent a lot of time driving around London looking and spotting things and trying to remember where they were. And then this was the summer of 2003, I think, when a skateboard company called Heroin, a British company run by a guy called Foz, a really lovely, good man, and he had a Japanese team coming over to skate the UK, and so we went out for a couple of days to shoot pictures. And as a skate company or a brand, they were kind of into quirky kind of skateboarding things. They weren't just sort of straight up kind of following the mainstream. They were off on a little tangent, and I had this kind of quite a few little spots like this just tucked up my sleeve that no one had ever probably seen or let alone thought of skating. And it is a school. It's just behind the Edgware Road. I don't know if it's still there. And you know, you take skateboarders to these places and go, what about skating up there? And you never know if they're going to look. Well, they normally look at you and go, what are you on about? I can't skate that. Or, you know, but sometimes it works out, and this worked out for a photograph. And I guess, yeah, I mean, I do like architecture, and I mean, when I look at that picture now, it's all a bit wonky, isn't it? And it's not like a kind of classic architectural shot where you get your verticals all right and everything like that. It's a bit wonky, but I guess that adds to the kind of reportage kind of vibe, and also
yes,
he was probably only on the roof for 5 or 10 minutes before we inevitably got kicked off. So so I guess that's the story behind that. Yeah,
it's definitely, well, it's a kind of a shoot and run type shot, isn't it? Ideally you go down the avenue of framing that perfectly and getting all the verticals lined up and all wonderful, but the roof, it's wonky, so actually the shot kind of is almost better being slightly wonky. And obviously, as you say, it sort of lends itself to that fact that you could really only be there for a very short period of time before someone came and grabbed your ear and pulled you away. So I think the photojournalism side is in that shot perfectly illustrates exactly where you're starting to kind of see your style. And you talk about architecture, so nothing is better than to show your third skate shot that we selected for today, of the viaduct. Now this is featured in a few other images since, but when we were talking recently, you said this was quite a long time ago. Maybe you were even one of the first people there with a skateboard. And so up on the screen here is two shots. I like this particularly for two reasons, because obviously it shows again your photojournalistic style sort of coming through. The classic sports photographer doesn't generally show, or action sports photographer really doesn't show a lot of the build up, and you've got him wandering over to this sort of monolith in the ground, and only when you then pop to the second shot do you see this sort of matrix kind of feel of an architectural beauty. So talk us through how you found yourself in this particular situation. The story is quite a sweet one.
So I guess leading on from what I just said, this kind of interest in architecture, but also this interest in kind of finding things that weren't intended to be skateboarded, and trying to find that and try and make them skatable. And a friend of mine, Howard Byram, at the time was living in Brighton, and he was working for National Geographic. He was researching some sort of project in a library, and in a book he found the Balcombe Viaduct, which 10-15 years ago I wouldn't have told you the name of that, because I felt it was kind of top secret and you didn't want anyone else going there taking a picture. Now it's been well trodden. So basically he found it in a book, and this is again probably 2003, 2004, that kind of era.
Yeah.
And he basically found this thing and said, wow, what if you could shoot a picture? And I was taking pictures with Laurie Sherman, who's the chap in the image, and we were sort of compiling enough images for a feature anyway, for a magazine. So I was already shooting with him, and he's a good friend as well. And so we went down there, found this, on our hot tip off, we found this, and we'd got some soft wheels that we could put on the board to make it kind of skatable. In fact, a few of us went down. I went down with Laurie and Tom Crow and a few others, and basically this was what we saw, and that was the angle. That just looked like that infinity angle. That just looked like the spot. And I guess inspired by people like Thomas Struth or these architectural photographers, I tried to get everything perfect, and and there we are. That's what it is. And I guess that's probably one of my sort of greatest hits of the skateboarding thing. And I've exhibited it, and the British Journal of Photography picked up on it and put it on the front cover and things like that. So I guess it's a bit of a crowd pleaser, but it is. I'm proud of it. It's a good moment.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, it is a good moment. It's a good moment because obviously, into that position is not exactly easy. But just the infinite. It's like a mirror, isn't it? In a way. Yeah. When you look into mirror versus mirror, it just disappears.
Yeah.
Away.
Sorry to talk over you. Shortly after that was published on the British Journal of Photography, I had a phone call from some random kind of producer for a TV program, saying, just wondered, where did you take this picture? And I said, oh, well, I'd rather not tell you. And she's like, yeah, but it's not real, is it? You've kind of done it in a computer, haven't you? I was like, no, it's real. And she's like, well, where is it? I was like, I don't really want to tell you. And I kept the secret for a while, But yeah, it's a good one. And then the other
should have asked for some good money.
Well, they would never have done. It everyone wants something for nothing. But the other image, again, I guess this was also a bit of a turning point for me, because I was assisting in the fashion world around this kind of time, and I was as interested in photographing people, I suppose, as I was in photographing the action. And I realised that skateboarders and all my friends were really quite interesting looking people, and maybe I took that for granted being in the scene, but everyone was pretty cool looking. So I started wanting to photograph the people, not just the action. I guess also to tell the story around the action. So often skateboard magazines would just show that fisheye action shot that you had of Graham or something without any real context or surrounding. So, the shot of them walking up and approaching it and giving it some kind of context and maybe telling a story and maybe documenting something, perhaps, that was kind of something I was interested in doing at the time as well. So it wasn't just the action, it was people.
So that's where you sort of started to feel that you were kind of comfortable photographing more than that single image that we'd sort of discussed. Yeah. That then sort of started to see your career kind of build in that manner, by shooting a lot more images around the vibe that we now see in your sort of almost voyeuristic approach to shooting. The shots we're going to show next are from your cold water surfing collection, and here you can really see again your approach to looking at the people, shooting the people, not necessarily the action. The first shot that we have is obviously of action, cold water. It looks pretty cold. You can see they've all got their wetsuit gloves and hats on. And obviously coming from where you do, you need to obviously have that sport element in there. It can't be all about what goes on away from the stage, shall we say. But this shot I love. It's part of the wider series that you travelled around Nova Scotia, Vancouver Island and Hokkaido to shoot. So the one I'm going to put up is now is Nova Scotia, Jeremy Broadcove, walking along what looks a very cold road, assume back to his car. Whether he's the same guy that was in that shot of the surfer, that's up for you to tell us. But what brought you to the world of cold water surfing, and how did you sort of approach it in this manner? What sort of made you kind of really head down this more photojournalistic approach?
So I think, like a lot of the things I end up photographing, a lot of it is chance and just being asked to photograph something and then taking that a bit further and pursuing it. So the same thing happened with the road cycling, but that's another story really. But so with this, I got a relationship with a magazine called Adrenaline, which became Huck Magazine, and it was a kind of youth culture, sports, action sports, lifestyle kind of magazine. And they had this idea, could they send me and Chris Nelson, a journalist, to Vancouver Island, to photograph the cold water surf scene. And Chris is a surfer, and he's written several books about surfing around the world and whatever. So basically they sent us off to Vancouver Island, and to be fair, Chris did all the legwork in terms of kind of finding who we could meet and where we would go and all that kind of stuff, and I would really just document that. So I guess it was chance that I got that job. I remember I just got my first digital camera, so I got the Canon 1DS Mark II or something. It's one of the kind of early digital cameras, so I was pretty snap happy with it, I suppose, in a way.
With your 2 gig cards.
At the time, I guess I was the style of photography. I suppose I was inspired by people like Philippe Lourdes, Stephen Shaw, Joel Sternfeld. So this kind of a mixture of kind of architecture and portraiture, and then even Richard Avedon as well. So there's pictures of me photographing Japanese surfers against black sheets and things like that. So I had all these kind of influences of photographers that I really just recently discovered and was really quite excited about. And there I was going to kind of, Canada, and all this exciting stuff unfolding in front of my eyes. So again, I wasn't a surf photographer, and I never had any intention of getting in the water with a housing and doing that kind of thing. So it was always going to be a story about the people that did this, that kind of live in these really inhospitable, cold places, but still want to surf. And it's definitely not the Californian dream, So it's brilliant. It was a great gig, driving around. Chris would Chris drive? I think he would drive. Actually, I don't think he's got a driving license. Driving around, looking out the window, seeing these interesting things like, disused car lots or kind of desolate villages, and just jumping out and having the luxury to stop and photograph what interested you. And then along the way meeting these really interesting characters. Jeremy at Broadcove, he wasn't anyone we really knew. We just met him on the beach, and there was this mist and his little kind of Nissan or whatever it is down the end of the road there. And, so it is all kind of reportage photography, but some of it's considered and some of it's set up. But on the whole, it's just sort of drawing on your influences and sort of applying that to what you're seeing.
Yeah. So the bearded fellow with the big surfboard, I think this is a beautiful shot. This kind of fits exactly with your story, isn't it? It's people with their thing, doing their thing, and just that shot on its own, sort of his gaze, the way he's holding the board, it makes you question. Okay, I mean, I don't know the picture. You haven't told me the story, but he looks like he's possibly a board maker. Maybe that's his pride and joy. They look as though there are sort of tips of different types of board behind him, unless they're shark teeth. But this is a great one. I think this is a real sort of a real Richie shot. It's got real character and it's got a real story. This is one of those classic shots that say, "Picture says 1,000 words."
So his name's Wayne Violette or something along those lines, and Wayne was a tip-off that Chris had discovered. He was an old school surfer from this area. He'd been there since the 60s, and I think the rumor has it that a lot of Americans kind of traveled up the coast and moved to Canada to avoid being drafted for the Vietnam War, and he may well have been one of those characters, and that might well be why he ended up in Nova Scotia. Not Nova Scotia, Vancouver.
Vancouver, right, yeah.
So Wayne was a really interesting character that we met, and he was a shaper. So he basically, out of necessity, had to basically start making his own surfboards, because I think the nearest surf shop was 200 miles away in Portland or something like that in America. So I think he started making his surfboards out of necessity. The board that he's got his hand on, there was a story behind that, and I think it was one of the first boards he made. And the WP, he always told people it stood for wave power, but he let us into a secret that it actually was the nickname his girlfriend gave him at the time of Waney Poos, which isn't quite so cool, but quite a funny story. But he was such a cool dude, and we went to his house and he had all these vintage Gibson guitars and stuff. And I guess in terms of the photographic style, I was really influenced by Philippe Lorca de Courchet at the time, and that kind of that mixture of kind of flash and available light, which actually seemed it was the same thing that skateboard photographers were doing in a different way and for a different necessity, I suppose. But anyway, I was really influenced by that kind of his work and that style of photography, hence that kind of lighting style, I suppose.
Yeah, the glow on the side of the board.
Yeah, and it's supposed to, I mean, it's a set-up portrait, but I suppose it's supposed to feel a little bit like it was a bit of a court moment as well. But yeah, really interesting character. So lucky to do these jobs where you get to travel the world and meet all these just bizarre, interesting people as you go. I mean, really, really lucky. So that's the kind of story behind Wayne and Wave Power. Or
that's what we'll keep it as. Yeah, well, keep his dignity for him. I think it's a lovely shot. I mean, you're right. It's I'm going to pop it up on the screen again, actually, because I personally really like it. It's got that real sort of balance. It's sort of, he's all-knowing. He's not revealing too much. You've captured it just at the right moment, although obviously it's slightly set up. But effectively, apart from the glint on the side of the board, you wouldn't necessarily know that could obviously be coming from a shaft of light somewhere else. But it's very beautiful, and it'd be interesting to see, if looking through some of Philip Lorca-da-Corsia's work, if there's any shot that stands out that maybe you took great influence from.
Well, I wouldn't. I'd say that was a reference of the time, but I wouldn't say this looks anything like one of his pictures. I mean, that was just the reference that was in the back of my mind. To say I was anywhere close to creating an image like him, that would be just ridiculous. But I mean, they were photographers and things in the back of my mind that I was aspiring to. And they influenced the way I approached things and what I did. But to say that I was executing anything close to what they were doing,
no. I mean, I don't mean it in that manner. More in the it's recognizable in the sort of the way that you approached it. So moving away from surf and onto something a little bit more speedy is your work with Valentino Rossi, or should we say for Dainese in Italy. And this piece of work is a great little story for obviously an extremely well-known person in the world who lives, shall we say, vicariously, just purely because of the speed that he goes around the track. And the series of pictures that I popped in the video, we'll show some of them now. This is great because it shows how you can really kind of get under the skin of a topic and work as the unseen person who reveals details to us. The intimate conversations of Rossi with the designers, checking over the new suit to start. So, what led you to this? What led you to this commission?
So it was a design agency I'd got a relationship with, and they picked up Dainese as a client, and they were producing some, I don't know what they were producing, a small book, I think, for Dainese or something like that. So basically I hopped on a plane with the journalist to Venice, and I think I was 8 hours ahead of the journalist flight, so I checked my camera bag into a locker at the airport and took a bus into Venice and had lunch by a canal on my own.
Fabulous.
Before coming back and meeting him and heading off to Dainese's offices. And I from memory, we had one day there, so we had to shoot one part was like their offices and kind of documenting that side of things, but obviously they'd got Valentino Rossi turning up to, he was approving a load of I'm not quite sure which image you were just showing, but he's approving a load of marketing material or advertising imagery, I think, in this, and also looking at new products and suits and whatever. But I guess what's interesting is I didn't really know who Valentino Rossi was before I did the job, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but actually that naivety is sometimes quite helpful when you're photographing famous people. And I suppose my sphere of awe in terms of celebrities and things was always kind of musicians and maybe skateboarders, but really I didn't really know anything about motorsports racing, and I didn't really know who he was, so I probably had to look it up. But it makes it a lot easier to photograph someone who's famous if they're not already elevated on that platform in your own mind, so you're just photographing another person, really. But I could sense when I was there the way everyone was kind of bustling and hustling and running around him that he was obviously pretty big.
Big shot.
Yeah. And we were there for a day, so I think he was only there for a few hours in the afternoon. So basically, I didn't have very long, but we shot a portrait of him in this leather room, and this I don't know if you got the picture there, but this room with all these motorbike leathers hanging up, and Dainese keep all the leathers that have been crashed by all their riders, and they keep them to analyse them and go back and look and see how they've worn, where they've worn, and how they can improve their product, which I thought was quite amazing.
I'm just gonna pop that one up on the screen. I haven't prepped it, but
okay,
I'm just gonna put it up for the viewers to see now. It's a pretty cool shot, actually, I must admit, when you sort of look at them and think where they've all come from and who they've been on. So there it is. I know we're hovering in the background, but it's on screen now. The shot I particularly liked in relation to that was the one of Valentino with his own leather, or I assume to be his own leather, which I guess you were sort of walking to.
Let me see which image you're talking about.
It's 117 comp. So there's this beautiful black and white portrait of him in the leather room, and then hung on the wall is a destroyed suit from where I assume obviously he flew off the bike at some point.
Yeah, got to be honest, don't know if that is his leather or not, or whether I've put together two images that I liked, but
let's say it is.
Let's say it is.
For the purpose of the story.
I don't want to get caught out and someone say he doesn't ride that type of motorbike, or that hasn't got his number on it or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you know,
it illustrates beautifully though what is in there, I think.
Yeah, there's all this stuff. I mean, it's quite amazing. And the president of Dainese, I went in his office and started photographing, you know, his office, and on his shelves he's got kind of signed pictures of American astronauts and things like that. I mean, it's quite a bizarre but quite incredible place. And again, it's like this real, just such a privilege to be able to go and take pictures and see people's workplaces, just see like what different people do day in, day out. And that's another example. You just go in there and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And it was a really interesting kind of it was an interesting time with him. And we were getting to the end of our time with him. We only had a couple of hours of following him around, and they said he's got to go and get in his plane and head off. And I said, well, he's got his own he's got his own aeroplane parked down the road. So I said, could we come and get some shots of him sort of getting into his plane or getting out of his plane? I think that would make a good story, you know, finish off this story really nicely. So they said, come along. So we jumped in the car with him and drove to the private airfield, and there was all these kind of people, kids, kind of trying to get autographs off him, and pilots walking past, kind of looking at him. And still, I don't really know how famous this guy is. I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing private jets, and I'm thinking, right, okay, yeah, he's a big deal. So, we managed to get shots of him kind of coming in and out. You know, I asked him to come in and out of his private jet a few times, so we could kind of tell this story, or this story in my mind at least, you know. So it was quite an amazing day, and obviously now I realise how kind of a big a deal he is. It's nice memories as well.
Of course, yeah. But you're right. One thing to pick you up on about when you are commissioned to photograph someone who is in the general spectrum of things quite a famous person. You know, we've mentioned that you shot Paul Smith, you shot Chris Froome, you shot Ben Stokes. They're all fairly omnipotent names. But again, only if you're into cycling maybe, or fashion, or cricket. Valentino, he is a big name, but if you don't know the person, then it makes it so much more less pressured, and you feel far less inhibited in asking, you know, could you go that way, or could you go that way, or, you know,
that is true,
obviously. Yeah. I think you probably find as you shoot that it becomes more evident that this person is actually something, and so then, especially when you find out they've got their own jet, you're like, okay, I might have missed something here. Yeah. But you're right on that point. It's very valid. You know, when you're sent to photograph a big name, there's always far greater pressure on you, regardless of however many famous people you've shot, and however you think easy it is, if you know that they're the big name, then there's always that sort of overriding pressure. So it's interesting to hear, kind of with your story there, that at the beginning he was another person who rode motorbikes, and your stories kind of your pictures rather, and the way you told the story sort of changed as the day progressed slightly.
Yeah, that's it. You start to slowly work it out and realise. But I mean, it's nice. That naivety is nice, because if someone's already on a platform, you find it very hard to ask them to do things that you want or need them to do to get your picture and get your job done. So it's quite nice not knowing that much, really, sometimes.
Go in there oblivious. That's
exactly.
Maybe, is that Richie's rule? Go in there oblivious.
Google it afterwards.
Don't do your homework.
Don't do your homework. Look afterwards. You don't really need to know who they are, do you, or what they're achieving? You don't really need to know that. You're going in there to kind of create a picture or tell your own story. It's not even necessarily.
Precisely. Well, I think that's very true. Actually, that's why you were commissioned in the first place, to go and come back with some honest imagery, and that's what you did. You weren't influenced by the people, the fame, exactly. So fame to maybe being, should we say, under the radar. We're moving on to sort of more present day imagery that has been shot in kind of couple of recent years by you as a sort of larger commission for Eastpak. And this series of imagery that we're going to show, there's sort of 3 sets. This is really great because this shows how you've kind of moved into being able to shoot something with a commercial angle, but retaining that voyeuristic photojournalistic approach, and starting with the apex mob. Now, got to get this right, otherwise they'll come after us. But these are great. When I was looking through these and trying to choose some, they really do tell a story about this renegade bunch out sort of parkouring around the streets of London, and you've magnificently captured them doing exactly that, whilst telling sort of the story about how wonderful an Eastpak bag is. So I loved it. I think the way that you incorporated the sort of black and white, grainy, which kind of could be back in the 60s sort of look, to guys scuttling off down with the hoods up, really kind of goes very much from that first shot of the skateboarder through to your modern day. So tell me, how did you come across, how did this all come about, and what was the sort of the art direction, the approach?
So I've got a good friend who's a filmmaker, film director, who's had a long-standing relationship with Eastpak for many years. Mm-hmm. And he's made lots of fantastic documentary films for them, and I've been pestering him to try and get me in on the scene to shoot for Eastpak, because I thought there was some really interesting stuff to be done there. And he kindly sort of started taking me along on the Eastpak jobs and kind of got me in there. And so his name's Tim Walker, and Tim's a filmmaker, director, and the Apex Mob, actually all the people we've shot for Eastpak they've had some sort of relationship with Eastpak, and Eastpak have presented them to us as someone they'd like to make a documentary and shoot photographs of. So there's already a relationship there with them and the brand. So I'd shot quite a bit of free running things in the past. I'd shot some stuff for Red Bull of free runners in Q8 and all sorts of things. So I was kind of familiar with what these guys were going to do. I mean, I really like what they do. They're urban explorers as much as they are kind of free runners or parkour athletes. And I really respect the way it's so kind of there's ridiculous risks, but in their minds they're very well considered risks, and they're quite capable of doing all the things they're doing. But I mean, I'm scared of heights, so some of the stuff they're doing is just it's bonkers, isn't it? And you're like, oh, are you really going to do that? Are you sure you want to do that? But so I mean, very lucky to be invited to sort of shoot this for Eastpak in collaboration with my friend Tim. Yeah.
When you were shooting this, I mean, obviously there's a shot of them up on the pipes. With, I'm not sure, is that Docklands in the background?
I think it probably is. Yeah. So it's basically on Brick Lane. That's on top of the Truman Brewery.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And it's a location.
East London, for those of you not aware.
It's East London. It's a location you can hire, and we're shooting for a corporate client here, basically. So you can't take too many. You can't do too many things that you shouldn't be doing, if you know what I mean. So this was a legitimately sought out location. Engineered
danger.
Yeah, I don't think they were supposed to be on there, but it makes a good picture, doesn't it?
But you didn't get any higher.
I think it looks better from down below. I mean, I'm still on the roof. Still out of the comfort zone.
We're shooting them and running around after them. I mean, this is fairly. This shot is reasonably muted, obviously. And some of the others, I'd imagine, and even more that you didn't share with me, are probably slightly more risque. Did you kind of have to draw a line and say, guys, I really can't go any further?
Ultimately, I mean, so really it falls on the shoulders of the director in terms of the responsibility and things like that. But there was some stuff they were trying to do, jumping over some gaps that they just had to say, look, by all means, come back and do it in your own time, but please don't do it today. And they were jumping off. It was literally like this. I don't know, I'd say probably a 70 feet kind of drop. With a gap of maybe 10 foot to jump off, and they were, this was in a bit of downtime while we were trying to work out our next shots. They were seriously, thinking about jumping over this and probably backflipping it as well. And I for a long time I've asked skateboarders and athletes to do ridiculous things. I've asked Dougie Lampkin to do an endo on the end of some rocks over the sea. You ask people to do silly things, but you also expect them to say no if it's out of their kind of their safety zone. But some of the things these guys were doing was terrifying. Yeah, but they know what they're in control. They're comfortable with it, but certainly out of my safety zone.
Yeah, definitely sounds it. And there's therein shows a sort of issue with shooting that type of sport sometimes, and having to try and track people down and can put you on a bit of a dangerous level if you're not careful. So lesson to be learnt.
Yeah, there weren't too many risks taken in this, certainly not from my part. But I mean, what's interesting about this set of images, I guess, is that it's shot to try and look like there is some sort of story. There's some sort of, they're traveling somewhere, they're going from A to B, they're running past a window, they're climbing, they're doing their thing. So this is all constructed imagery, really. I mean, they're not really running from A to B to get to C.
Well, there you go. That's the beauty of merging photojournalism and commercial work together, isn't it? It's like a wonderful existence together.
I mean, it's kind of real, but it's also not real.
It's real in that it's brought feelings of fear to you while you're doing the shoot. If that says quite a lot, I feel.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely a challenge to sort of control your trigger and take a strong shot when your heart's falling out of your chest, because you don't quite know if that guy's going to make the next jump and if he's going to end up in an ambulance.
And then asking him to stand a little bit to his left so it frames up a bit better or something like that.
He's only got another centimetre of metal to stand on.
Back a bit. Oh.
Yeah, but he'd be able to backflip off it. No problem. No problem. Slightly different. A slightly different subject though was the second couple of images here, where you weren't allowed to show the face. Now I hope I've got these right. The cyclist is behind the glass in one of them, and I believe that's the same person as the sort of designer. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes,
good,
you are.
Good.
Okay.
So then both of those two shots overhead, slightly different approach here.
So yeah, definitely a challenge, this one, because his name's Spy, and he's based in Madrid. He's an urban artist, and the challenge here was he had to remain anonymous because of a lot of the urban art that he does. So no one knows who Spy is. So
he's a sort of Madrid Spanish Banksy, kind of.
Yeah. He does actually a lot of kind of quite amazing art installations in public places, like lays huge circular lawns in courtyards, and his circles is his kind of thing. But anyway, he did the interesting thing with all this wall of surveillance cameras all looking kind of one direction. I don't know if you've seen that, but anyway, so as a photographer who photographs people, there was a challenge right there. Is how are we gonna make this work with someone whose face we can't show? And it's quite an interesting challenge. And there's obviously the cycling tie-in. I'd mentioned that I'd shot quite a lot of cycling, road cycling, and sort of fell into that.
Yeah. So you're taking knowledge learnt there.
Yeah, so there's a crossover from all those things, and yeah, these were quite nice, weren't they? Through the frosted glass. This is in outside, like his studio, where he was planning a big installation, and there was this frosted glass, and it seemed a brilliant place to photograph someone whose face you couldn't show, but you wanted to tell a story. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a very nice shot actually, very very non-revealing. And a clever use of what you have around you. I think the second shot of where you just see his specs and his stubble is quite interesting, because you kind of get a feel as to who this guy is, but not quite. You almost feel that when I was looking through the pictures that you shared, and I'd seen the others, that at some point you're going to show his face, aren't you? At some point you're going to, but you don't. And that must have been a killer. You couldn't even take one picture of his face throughout the whole commission.
Well, I couldn't show it publicly, but then again, it's not part of the brief to do that, so there's not really any motivation.
No, but I mean, I suppose so. But did you not feel that, being the photographer that you like to be, right? You're telling the story, and then it's like, ta-da! Here he is. Here's Spy.
Yeah, well, you want to sort of show the person. I mean, a big part of the documentary process is sort of seeing someone's face and sort of that telling you something about who they are,
do or who they are.
Yeah. This other way. I mean, actually, the other thing that's quite interesting about these, I don't know if you showed the ones of him on his bike, but the fact he's wearing that kind of face mask, which when we did this was a really odd thing to do, but we did it to hide his face. But when you look at it now, I mean, we shot this last year, I think. When you look at it now, a face mask just seems so normal, doesn't it? But it
does actually, yes. I'm going to put that up on the screen without my nice white border, because you're very correct. Here we go. So I'll make it bigger. You are correct, because actually when I looked at that, I didn't even flinch because of the current sort of state of the world, shall we say. But obviously, yes, as you now point that out, that would have been quite weird a year ago.
Yeah. So, but again, another lovely project to work on, but a different set of challenges, that one. I mean, I was certainly sitting in the plane thinking, how are we going to make this one work? How are we going to make a feature about someone whose face you can't see?
Yeah, well, it's good. I think you achieved it pretty well. I mean, obviously, tricks are using sort of things to sort of half shield the camera, a bit like that shot actually, where you've kind of covered some of the scene with I don't know what it is, a yellow scrim of some
it's like a
format.
barrier in the foreground or something like that. But yeah, I do quite like shooting across or over things to add a kind of sense of depth, and I suppose it
Yeah,
makes it slightly voyeuristic as well, doesn't it, when you do
it
that?
does. Yeah, it does very much. In fact, no better than really in these last shots of Nicola Adams, and in particular the first one. Uh, I love for exactly that reason. Here
And
she
is that
is, wrapping her wrists, ready to fight. So this is the last set of images from the Eastpak shoot, and the last ones that we're going to discuss with Richie today. Here you've shot through the ring ropes. There's a bit of sort of blurriness to the foreground, and obviously she's beautifully well lit and looking off into the distance. This epitomizes the voyeuristic image. I think this almost epitomizes the style that I sort of see as Richie.
thanks? Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? That it was the National Boxing Academy or school or something like that in. I'm going to embarrass myself now, but I think it was in Sheffield. And it was a big, bright place. And again, I was working alongside the director and the film crew, and we share the brief, but obviously I've got a slightly different set of challenges to the film guys, and it wasn't an easy place to try and create a vibe. It was quite evenly lit, and actually this is, if I remember correctly, I used LEDs for this to kind of put that kind of backlight across her face there, and yeah, I mean, it's just wanting to create a picture that looks believable, like I caught a real moment. I think shooting through things like those railings and things adds to that kind of slightly voyeuristic, slightly detached, not supposed to be there, maybe not completely considered kind of
Absolutely,
thing.
yeah.
But I mean, she was only sitting there because I'd asked her to, so I could take some photographs. So I mean, it's so it's a bit of photographic smoke and mirrors, but
But that's the beauty about it. I think that's almost a shot that could have been shot with a long lens. Kind of could have been a telephoto. You have, as a viewer, we have no idea what the scene is there. There could be skylights that could be pumping through. Could be a light from the ring. The fact that we've talked about it before already. The image is slightly non-straight, so it adds a sort of element of that is quite dynamic in its approach, and so you feel that you've definitely sort of shot it on the fly, and it does exactly that. I mean, that's the beauty about photography, isn't it? It's a lie, not always, but in this instance,
yeah, some of it's true, but just not all of it. And that is the beauty of photography, isn't it? That you can't see what's before or what's after, or at least you can control. You can control those things in terms of what you show people, can't you? So
yeah.
You don't know what's out of that frame, do you? In terms of left and right or before or after in time,
Of course, and that's the one big thing over filmmaking, isn't it? And here, you styled that shot to a believable point that actually we thought it was just quickly caught. And in other shots that were put up, the other one, Nicola's actually in the midst of a bit of she's going to punch you up, it looks like. Again, super dynamic here, a little bit more moody, obviously, in the midst of it.
So that again, I can't see what you're putting up, but is that the shot of her taking a swing, basically?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the gym where she kind of basically learned and trained to box in the early days, and again, it was predominantly a documentary filmmaking project. So I have to sit comfortably alongside the filmmaking side of things.
Okay.
So we take it in turns to get our bit. Sometimes we kind of cross over, but it's lean. So you've got a director and a DP or a cameraman, and then you've got me. But we lit this with what did we put? I think we put a couple of HMIs outside the window. So it's continuous. So I guess if I was approaching this as a photographer, I'd have probably thought, well, I should really use flash to freeze it, blah, blah, blah. But actually, I can't do that because I haven't got time to set up as a photographer. We're going to share the setup. So it's continuous, and that actually gives you the movement in her glass, and nothing's perfect. It's all a little bit blurred, but that's kind of actually adds to the charm and the believability of that image, I think.
It does, very much, yeah.
What you can't see with the photograph is the noise, because there's other people training in that gym, and there's this bell, this kind of sound, this buzzer that goes off every minute or two, which they must keep resetting so they can time how long they're doing their different exercises. So there's all this noise of people punching and their feet scraping along the ground, and then this buzzing sound, and at the same time you're trying to kind of get your thing done. So you can't see it from the image, but it's a really kind of busy environment. And again, it is kind of a document. It is kind of a real picture. I mean, she wasn't there training because she wouldn't have been there training if we hadn't taken her there. But what she's doing is real and authentic, and you kind of let stuff unfold and kind of happen and then photograph it. So it's kind of controlled and constructed to a point. And then you're sort of actually, once you've created that scenario, whether it's with the light or the location or whatever, then you're just doing what you do. You're just trying to kind of capture the moment and find so half planned and half kind of left to chance. That's how I do a lot of things, and that's how you, I think, get something that's believable out of a constructed scenario.
Yeah, very much. I think actually playing into that, what just crossed my mind is when you look at this picture, obviously you say it's all set up and there's all this noise going on, but obviously you look at the picture and it's all very peaceful and serene, and she's super focused, and almost kind of the picture almost does it justice in a different way. What that piece that's going on is this focused head of hers. She more than likely doesn't hear any of the other noise that's in there when she's boxing, apart from that one bell that she's listening out for. Everything else is zoned, and it's kind of, she's in the zone as you are on a bike or swimming or whatever. So almost that picture tells that story in quite a nice way, in a different way to what the video would.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Strong, very strong. All right, well, last pick. I mean, we're rounding up to our hour actually in a big way. So I'm only going to flick this one up on the screen because this is nice. We were just talking about hiding the face of the Madrid spy, and I'm a stickler for graphical images. I love it. I love the vibrancy of this shot, and this is definitely another sort of Richie. And so these three shots here of Nicola. Pop them back up. All really sort of summarise that perfect little workout session.
It sort of tells a bit of a story, doesn't it? Actually, the first two different gyms, because that first one that they shot through the ring was a different gym actually, but still pieced together. They do tell some sort of narrative, some kind of story. Apart from just the one punching shot or whatever, don't they? And that floor looked amazing. We're trying to work out how we could get that in there, and make that part of the image. And skipping, looking down again, not perfectly framed. I mean, in fact, when someone's skipping up and down, you can't really perfectly frame it anyway. So I'd like to claim some sort of credit for considering it framed like that, but really you point your camera at that kind of thing, you have a rough idea in the back of your head and hope that you kind of come out of it with something you like, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you did. You achieved it. I think it's a great image to finish on, because with that you sort of brought the whole little story of Nicola Adams round together, and it perfectly summarises the sort of the style I think that you shoot in, and we've seen grow from an hour ago / 20 years to kind of where you are now. I have one big question though. Is there something that you have not yet shot? Someone, something, some sport, some location. It can be any one of those in a way. Or if you've got it all nailed in one answer, that you haven't yet done that you'd like to.
I guess to answer that question in a roundabout way is that I've always thought with photography, what's quite fantastic about it is that whatever you happen to be interested in your life, in theory, you could probably photograph that and make a living out of it and enjoy it. So 20 years ago, it was photographing skateboarding and music. And so I don't know what that is now, right now. I'm quite happy with everything and everyone I've photographed to this point. But I'm not the same age I was 20 years ago, so my interests have changed. So I don't know. Can't really answer that. I'm just still looking for the next thing that interests me that I want to photograph. I don't know what that is though.
Interesting. That's something for you to think about in that case.
Thanks for setting me on that path.
You've got to come up with it. Better flick through all those books behind you and have a sort of a moment. Go and make yourself a nice coffee and give it some consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I am enjoying. I do really enjoy actually just fulfilling a commercial brief. So I do like advertising work where someone's basically got a photographic problem that needs solving. So they've got an idea of an image or something, and they come to me and ask me if I can sort of make that happen or visualize it. And right now I like sort of the creative problem solving element of being a photographer. So someone comes to me with a brief and I hopefully execute it and fulfill it and give them a photograph, and I really enjoy that at the moment. Yeah.
So that's where we're at. Okay, I'm gonna throw you a creative problem, get you to solve it.
Thanks. As long as you pay me to fix it, I don't mind.
Okay, so last question, Richie. We've been in 6 months of oddness. It looks set to continue for a good another 6 months. How has COVID changed things for you, and how do you see it, or should I say better, what one thing do you think will change forever as a result of this COVID scenario?
Okay, well, interesting. So I think, well, the way we work has already changed. So, I mean, I have been asked by 2 clients now to do remote photo shoots, and both on slightly different levels, but effectively not meeting in person the subject of your photograph. So I've done, which has been through mobile phones and sending backdrops and lights to people's houses and directing them as we're having this discussion, directing them over the internet, and on actually controlling their phone with an app, so I could take photographs of them through their phone using their phone camera, which solved a problem, but I wouldn't say it was the best creative solution for that. I've had another job for another company where we've sent lighting and a camera to someone's house, and we've directed someone else to control that. So we've been doing things like that, which I would say are sort of far from ideal, but they're a solution to the problem of not being able to get close to people. In terms of, I mean, obviously we're just doing things differently, aren't we? Photographers are just following guidelines and advice, and we're just being sensible. If we're shooting in the studio, we're having less people, we're wearing masks and whatever. I think it's also a bit of an excuse for, well, people are going to do things differently. I mean, I suppose people are going to question whether they still need photography if they've got away without having it for 6 months. But again, it's like all those kind of things where there's some sort of recession or something. People find other ways of doing photography that maybe are cheaper, and so the value of what we do perhaps may take a hit long term from this. So, so yeah, I mean, I think things have already changed the way we're working. Certainly in terms of, I've been quite lucky with quite a lot of travel over the last 10 years or so, and I've had jobs myself that should have been executed by a photographer from overseas who can't come to the UK. So the clients asked me to fulfil the latter part of a shoot. So we're going to travel less. I guess that could be a good thing if that means that there's less people coming here to shoot things, and perhaps people will come to me or us as photographers. I don't know. So things are changing. Yeah, I mean, it's all changed, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, also photo shoots now. I mean, you know, clients are asking me to shoot two people together. I'm saying, are you sure you want to shoot them with their arms around it? I mean, firstly, can we and should we be doing that? And secondly, do you want an image that is showing that? So I mean, who knows what we're even going to be photographing? I don't, what is
allowed, what is going to be the norm. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we'll probably look back at this video in a year or two and think, what on earth are we talking about? But
maybe not.
It seems like quite a big deal right now, doesn't it? So
it does. Yeah, very much. Yeah, it's interesting. When I was watching something the other day that had been recently produced, and people were giving big hugs and high fives and handshakes, and I thought, that's kind of not right now, is it? Well, at least not in the UK. I can't speak for other countries and how they're dealing with it. But it seemed obscure to me, considering I haven't been able to shake anybody's hand for months. So let's see. Yeah. Richie, thanks very much for joining me today. It's been a great pleasure talking through your career and seeing how your photography has developed, and discussing some of your projects in detail. Thanks for taking the time, and stay obviously fit and healthy.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I can't believe we managed to talk for an hour. I thought I'd be done in half an hour, but we're still here, aren't we? But I don't suppose anyone else is.
Don't believe that. There's plenty out there.
But thanks. Lovely to talk, and thank you very much.
Pleasure. We'll be seeing each other soon, I hope, at some point, but not touching.
No, elbows.
Elbows all the way. Cheers, Richie.
Take care. Thanks.
Another whopping interview there with the fine Richie Hopson. Some fabulous photography, really good discussions, and interesting to hear how he's dealt with some of the difficulties around the current environment and shooting. Do join me again next week. I'm joined by a fine minimal art type photographer from Santa Fe. So do tune in, and until then, take good care.